as special needs children. Who are they? Who qualify as a child with special needs? So understanding special needs is basically, this could be the environment that they live in. They could be hereditary. So the factors could be genetic or environmental. So as a teacher, as an educator, and somebody who leads the program needs to understand that, and accordingly take the background check of the child once they are admitted in the school. Then the nature would be definitely the nature of special needs of the students could be anything that could be delayed development, delayed or learning disability, physically some issues, or some sensory issues. All these come under special needs, or students with differently abled facilities that the school needs to provide. So some of the goals for the care and education of the students would be, or with such difficulties, would be expanding the language skills, increasing attention span, learning self-help skills, and mastering basic concepts. So this is something the school curriculum should cater to and ensure that they have provisions made for such students on these aspects especially. So, the learning disability would be involving understanding spoken or written language. They have difficulty in speaking, they have difficulty writing. It could be that they have very bad handwriting, not legible at all. So, they could be that they may not be able to listen instructions properly, they may not be able to follow instructions properly or spell things properly as per the age ability. So, what would be the strategies as per the school? So, you need to understand how you need to develop those behavior modifications. Multi sensory training should be given to the students, but for that, the teachers should be well trained. You should ensure that every task they do, it is analyzed properly, and certain reports or evidence analysis is done. Then physical disabilities. Physical disabilities, again, the educators who need to take care of these students, they have to understand what they are. So the school, as a school, you have to make sure that certain arrangements are made in the school to allow that freedom of movement of those children. As a school, you need to ensure the equipments is that the child needs are fitted properly, and they are child safe. They should know how to basically train this children to have self-help skills so that they are able to be as independent as possible. And you need to encourage these students or create activities in a way that they involve in a group. They should know the first aid procedures for the children, and especially epilepsy. So the safeguarding team should be well trained. But at the same time, if a teacher in the class has a child who has this epilepsy issue or any chronic health problem, that teacher should immediately be given a training on that particular ailment or disability, or for the differently abled child. Then there should be different equipments in the school or as per the class provided by the school. The therapist should be there, because anybody who's differently abled will find it difficult to fit in the natural environment or the natural scenario. As a school, you need to ensure that there are specialists for the school provision of the diet of that child, and there are programs that they have interventions like in regular basis, maybe weekly basis, maybe twice a week, depending upon the issue of the child. Okay, so the sensory disability. So sensory disability is the children who may have a problem where they're impaired, or they may have some listening aid or some anything that they are able to basically not function sensory as proper normal child. So, as a teacher, as a leader of the school, you need to ensure the teachers are well trained for those kids. So, the educators who need to work with such children, they need to understand that what the difficulty is. So, there should be proper check for each and every child like that. There are special schools as well, where you can have those trainings. Then communication disorder would be anything that the child is not able to display, or say for example they may have special needs in the way that they are talking. There would be speech impairments, like they cannot have a good speech model as per when they were young, or it could be genetic. They do not have proper development of the speech, so the child uses speech but it has difficulty in explaining themselves. So that means they need to have proper speech therapies regularly. Certain program as a class teacher needs to be made to ensure that that child has that training every time. And there have been cases with the mild speech issues where the children have developed that and they have become normal and they are now functioning properly. So as a educator, you need to ensure that you first identify whether these speech is articulation disorder or fluency disorder, or a language disorder or a voice disorder, where there is a problem. And when we say articulation disorder, the effect of the speech would be around the production of the speech. So they are not able to say certain words. Fluency would be there, the rhythm of the speech, they are getting kind of, there's a disconnection between the fluency of the speech. And then you have the language disorder, they are not able to express themselves better. They do not know how to choose the correct word. So, as a teacher or as an educator, when you're around them, you have to ensure that the language that you're using is appropriate as per what they should be using. Then there is a voice disorder where they cannot control the quality of voice is not there. They cannot control the loudness or the pitch of their voice. So they need that special training for that as well. Then there are students who are hyper aggressive or anxious. So that also, as a educator, school leaders, you need to understand where the student emotional or behavior disorders are, whether they are hyper aggressive, why they are withdrawn. Is it because they are not good, probably normal, but they're just insecure because of the family background that they have had. And we have had this discussion in intensive in the last slides as well, so you can go there in the last session. Whether they have excessive dependence on the adult or the pair. Are they fearless or are they fearful, in the sense that they just don't want to speak because little voice also disturbs them? Or there is hyper aggressive who, for no reason, if things don't go according to them, they are disturbed and they destroy property. They don't show the ability to stay, or if say for example they've done even small thing right, they want to be immediately awarded, and if they're not awarded, they create a ruckus. So all these things have to be sure how you're going to train these children. For that, a proper training of the teachers is required. Then the gifted or the talented children, they are again, they are different than the normal stream. So as the school, you have to ensure that there's a proper code for gifted and talented student. What is the state plan that is in place for the gifted or talented student, ensuring that that is implemented in the school properly. So generally the educators who have gifted or talented students in the class, they should have minimum 30 hours of staff development course, which is where they assess what kind of the students' needs are, where do they fit in the curriculum, what instructions the gifted students should be given, and they should be having a supplemental certification. As a school, you should ensure that who's treating gifted or differently able student, they have that certification if they are saying, and they should be tested on that as well if in case they don't have certification but they think that they can handle. So there should be annually additional hours for their professional development. That means annually they should be updating themselves and going for training so that they are well equipped to cater to such students. What will be effective instructional practices for teaching and positive behavior? So, as for the classroom, they should ensure that the classroom is clearly presented, and the planning should be as per differently able. So, that means if in a class you have differently able students, so that way your resources should be there, they should be taught accordingly, and your teaching should be reviewed, and throughout the school day they should know how you're going to execute the needs of the special students in the class. Then effective instruction practices for teaching positive behavior. So there should be all positive language should be used. So ensuring that the teacher is always using the language that is positive for the student. Reprimanding it should be prohibited as much as possible. Teachers should refrain from doing that. Try to include the student as much as possible by using positive and by encouraging the positive behavior. And there should be minimum distraction. If there is a child who gets distracted easily, what is there are do you have, as a school, do you have co-teachers or do you have teaching assistants available for them? All this needs to be taken into account. Then evidence-based intervention of the behavior, that is, as a teacher you should have your instructions ready in the class, so it is collaborative. So ensuring that there is a proper intervention plan for the child, ensuring that as a school you have evidence based files for those children, you have regular therapists coming in and observing, you have psychologists observing them in the class, what further a teacher needs to do than what she's already doing. And as a teacher, as a school, you need to ensure that there's a proper documentation happening for those students, evidence based plan is there, and then the monitoring and regular reviewing of their progress is there. So here the management needs to ensure that every school that is involved with that child knows about the child, and any progress that they notice should be evidenced, documented. Okay, working with children with special needs. So the roles of the special need professionals, it should be appreciation of individual differences. So that means as a need of that professional who is dealing with them regularly, and as a school, it should be provided as a school general training. That is, the school, the staff should be well trained to ensure that they have good appreciation for the individual differences. They understand that every child is different, and so they have to cater to them accordingly. As a school, you need to ensure there's a proper environment that is arranging for such needs. Regular assessment is done in any way, so there are objectives made for the teacher, for anybody if the teacher is not in the class, anybody can come and have a look. There should be a proper register displayed, easily accessible for anybody who will come in the class other than the teacher. Encouraging independence, so there should be somebody or all the time to ensure that there is some intervention and training going on regularly, to ensuring that they are included in the mainstream if they are severe cases. So the mainstream inclusion is there, and there is a scheduled planning to when you think, because you're doing the reviews regularly, when this child is ready to be in the mainstream education, the planning should be in place and foreseen by the management. So what would be the instructional strategies for the classroom? So as per in the classroom, there has to be basically three types, and that is direct instruction used for the entire class. So as a class teacher, they should be trained to ensure that there's a general instruction for the whole class. That means they are included. Then there are small group instructions portion wise. So you have already identified, so these are the students I'm going to give instructions separately after the whole class has started their work, and then differentiating the instruction between the individual students. So in those small groups also, there could be one group of 2 students or 3 students who have certain instructions, then there would be 3 or 4 students who may need a gifted as a gifted child in your class, so they may need instruction separately, and the ones with the learning disability can have learn instruction separately. So as a teacher, you should know that you have identified, even if you're not making them sit like that, because as a teacher, it's your plan what fits best for you. So you could fit those kids in three groups of average students, highly gifted, and somebody who have learning issues, because as a teacher you have planned this particular class so that they can have the best of each other, so that they can learn from each other. Peer learning is important. So as a teacher, it's your planning, but these three aspects should be looked after and strategies should be made according to them. Then you need to modify whenever required your instructions to accommodate the special needs students. So that would be attention and memory, concept development, functional use of objects and symbolic play, then pre-vocabulary and vocabulary, and self-direction. So all this, when you are planning, these things should be catered to. And initially, if you feel that you're not that great with your new handling the students, so as management as well, either you provide them that attention and memory, for example, what this they as a teacher should be doing, what should she be doing other than what she's doing for the normal class for their concept development, and functional use of objects, how they're going to use the certain objects which may be used normally, but sometimes who need students with special needs are not very good with handling the objects that they're giving to the whole class. So do that, say for example, that special child needs somebody sitting by their side while using, because they could be dangerous, because if they're using an equipment that is dangerous, that they, because they do not know where to draw the line, they do not know the safety measures, so it could be dangerous for the whole class. So they can then have a teaching assistant or a co-teacher in the class for that particular activity. And how much you can encourage the child for self-direction. So this bit of the activity they can do by themselves, but this is when the teacher should come and stand by them, or another adult can stand by them. What vocabulary they already have, and if in case it is not class appropriate in the sense that they're not at that level, so what would you add on to specially for them so that they understand the concept better? So how would you, what modifications you would do, because it's not just accommodating them, but it is creating some modifications as well for them. Oops. Oh, sorry. So that would be whether you're going to do is strategizing for optimizing development for the infant toddlers with special needs would be, or they could be pre-primary, primary. So you have to ensure cognitive development, emotional and social development, and physical development all are taken into account, and then you accordingly help. So for example, vocabulary development with cognitive issues, somebody who's having emotional or social development, whether they are able to recognize their emotions or not, are they able to handle their emotions in front of many people when they are getting involved in public interactions, whether they have physical disorders, so how much muscle movement they can do. So, for example, you know that they have issues from the very beginning with the muscle development and they are in a higher class. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to give them something to help with if you're doing an activity where muscle movement is required for the normal class? So, what equipment you have for them to ensure the muscle movement is properly done? And is there any nutritional needs that you need to ensure that they are catered to while they are in the school scenario? Then how you will accommodate them as per whether there is a provision for audio tape. So for example, there is a provision for braille for the one who are visually impaired, then there are certain verbal instructions or responses. Are they being dictated properly or not? What is that? How are they going to, for example, some children have speech issues. So have you given them something to ensure that their speech is clear? Or is there are so many equipments that are there? So is the school catering for those or not? So for the children who have problems, for example, sitting, they would prefer sitting in more lighted area because they have issues in seeing. So are those classes well lit? If they're not, then what special provisions you're making for them, and how you increase? Do you, in for example, have you given them the option to of time? For example, the normal class finishes an assignment for 20 minutes. Are they provided extra time for the or whatever assessment they are doing in the exam as well? Have they been given the provision to do that? Whether the laptops are provided for some children who can't write so they can type well, so is that done for them or not? Okay, so there are certain the Individuals with Disability Education Act, which as a school you should have in place, and accordingly you should ensure that you read it and the teachers are well catered to. So they have terms which you need to know is what qualifies a child as a special need, what are the examples, environmental factors and all, what disability the child has, and how you're going to carry on with that. Then you have instructional teaching positive behavior, which we've already discussed about. And then what examples of or optimizing development, an infant, toddlers, or early stages or middle childhood stage, what are there that you are doing as a school, or what their already done background is, and how you're going to take it forward as a school. So do you have any questions on this? Okay. So these are certain resources that you can have a look at to get a little more feedback. Okay, managing for equal opportunities, pluralism, and gender issues. So these children also have certain issues, or we can say special needs. So we have to ensure that we incorporate not only the children with special needs, but other needs as well, like the cultural and the gender issues that we now commonly are catering to, so that we can say multicultural education is something that should be key for each school. So what is multicultural education? So multicultural education as a field of study is designed to increase educational equity for all students and banks. Multicultural education is an idea, an educational reform movement, and a process. Multicultural education is a progressive approach for transforming education that holistically critiques and responds to discriminatory policies and practices in education. Okay. So multicultural education relates to education and instructions designed for cultures of several different races in educational system. And this approach of teaching and learning is based upon conscious building respect and fostering cultural pluralism and racial societies. So multicultural education, again, it is emerging, so there's lots to still be done, but we ensure that we do follow the instructions as per the guidelines of the educational system to ensure that we cater to and communicate well with the people with diverse groups in order to create a more civic and a moral community and environment in our schools or educational systems. So, what, as a multicultural educationist or an education system, you need to ensure that you're creating a safe and accepting, successful learning environment, increasing awareness of global issues, strengthening cultural consciousness, strengthening intercultural awareness, teaching students that there are multi historical prospects. So, ensuring that you're not only teaching about one cultural history, but you're ensuring that your education system has different historical prospects taken into account, encouraging critical thinking, and preventing prejudice and discrimination. James Banks, he was one of the known multicultural educationists, or we can say the father of multicultural education. So he had discussed 5 dimensions of multicultural education and 4 approaches that, as an institution or as a system, you should be taking to ensure multicultural curriculum reform takes place. So, the dimensions of multicultural education. So, according to James, he formulated these dimensions as content integration, knowledge construction process, prejudice reduction, equity pedagogy, empowering school cultures. So, dealing with infusion of various cultures, ethnicities, and other identities to be presented in the curriculum. So, ensuring as a school that you're doing that. So as a school, you have to again identify which activities do you think would be important, what sports you should be teaching, and as a teacher, which teacher would be best to represent that. So as a management, as the leaders of the school, you need to ensure you identify that kind of teachers who could cater to those. Then knowledge construction, so ensuring that the students, you as a, sorry, the school, you understand the students' needs, you have social positioning of the group through the knowledge presentation, recalling some activities done in the class for basic education, then classified under this. So ensuring that the children take into account some education, and then you take forward the knowledge and you build upon that knowledge. Then prejudice reduction, that means describing where the lessons and activities, in a way, they are implemented to assert positive image of ethnic groups. So that means the subject, there should be taken some good, I would say, historical events in the your particular subject, and then as a school you celebrate those ethnic groups achievements, so that there is a good intergroup relations and they improve, because now they are able to identify some of the students who they did not know, and now they're able to understand from what rich background they have come from. Then equity pedagogy, that means modifying teaching styles and approaches to facilitate the intent of facilitating academic achievements of the all students. And then these modifications obviously should be in order the students are facilitated. For example, you understand the background of the student, because when you're teaching something in the class and the student is new to the class, maybe coming from some different country, so the terminology that you're using or certain way you're using may not be understandable to the child, and he may not or she may not relate to those terms. So as a teacher, it becomes your duty to understand what is the other word or synonym of that in their culture, so that you can tell them this is what it means. If you are a teacher who knows their language, then perfect. If don't, you can take help of other teachers who understand their culture, and then create that facilitate that student there. Then empowering school cultures, that is, describe the examination of the school culture and organization for the intent to restructure institutional practices to create access to all groups. So ensuring that way of your examination is done in a way that all cultures and organizations are catered into. So there have been studies where students from different cultures and backgrounds are not exposed to certain terminology or way of doing, and when the exams have those difficult terminology, the students find it difficult even if they have the content knowledge to give those examinations. So ensuring that it is culture friendly. Then what activities can you initiate for the future as a teacher in order to empower those culture addressing multicultural learning? So what training you think you can do for that empowerment in the school itself? The four approaches, according to him, for multicultural education is contribution approach, the addictive approach, the transformation approach, and the social action approach. So the contributions approach. So this approach reflects the least important amount of involvement in multicultural educational approach. So that means selecting books, activities that celebrate holidays, heroes, and special events from the various cultures. So ensuring that the school or the class has that around them. For example, spending time. So the reading time could be Dr. Martin Luther King in January. In your curriculum it should be based is a common practice, because this approach, you are talking about diverse culture. You can talk about Easter. So in Easter you have books related to that, why Easter is celebrated. You have different other cultures. For example, you have other festivals, like in India we have Diwali. So have you incorporated Chinese New Year? Is that being discussed in the class or not? A book on it, why it is celebrated. Buddhism, for example, why they celebrate that. So all these aspects should be looked at, and there should be some profession for them to have a background story of different cultures. Then the additive approach. So that is additive approach. So additive approach is that you add on to concepts, themes, and perspectives, curriculum without changing its basic structure. So you're adding on to it. So it is, for example, perspective of Native American about Thanksgiving would be adding cultural diversity to the traditional view of Thanksgiving. So this approach, it definitely may not transform and should not be taught in a way to transform the original thinking of the others, but it is adding on to making them understand the values or beliefs of the other culture. So transformation approach, so that is change the structure of the curriculum. That means that as you have a standard traditional culture, the curriculum in the school, but now what you're doing is, as per, to encourage the viewpoints, the themes, or different issues that ethnic groups may or have as per their perspective or point of view, we change how we are doing. So for example, a unit of Thanksgiving would become an entire unit exploring cultural conflict. So this type of instruction involves critical thinking and involves consideration of diversity as a basic premise. So for example, so you're doing Thanksgiving, so you say this is the traditional way and this is how some other cultures celebrate. So you could have a discussion. If they are a little grown up students, you can start the discussion or the lesson with asking them, how do you celebrate in your house, how do you celebrate? So for that, the children are exposed to different cultures, how they can talk about it. They also understand about other cultures. How would you do it differently if so and so, your because your best friend is from a different culture? How would you have done if you were together in Thanksgiving? What would have you done so it becomes more acceptable for both the cultures. So these kind of discussions would encourage critical thinking as well, and encourage them to understand and accept different cultures, because now they are fond of their friends. The social action approach, so that is transformation approach plus activities for social change. So students are given instructions what to do. So, for example, after participating in a unit about recent immigrants to North America, students may write letters to senators, Congress, and newspapers editors to express their opinion about new policies. So that way, when you're asking students to think, so you are, what are you doing? You're telling them what, or probably you can have discussions, so that way they understand other point of view, they understand what they are thinking is correct or not, whether this could. And there has been cases where things have changed with a student or a child's thought of process is when encouraged, so the inclusion becomes much easier. So how would a teacher or the school cater to lesson planning for the multicultural classroom? So there, as per the school, there should be 7 steps that you should have, or they can vary in order. It's not necessary that they should go in this order, but these are important steps for lesson planning that you should do, ensuring the goals and objectives. Material and resources should be looked at, and anticipating anything that entry, or uh, there could be this group coming in or exiting, instructional input, what instructions you're going to give, guided practice, where you're going to have a guided practice in the group, then what will be the independent practice, and how the assessment and evaluation is done. So this is where the teacher articulates her expectations from as per the students, and you can take that from your basic guide. Your state curriculum guide would have that, and it would be behavior objectives, what she in the lesson needs to achieve. Sometimes what happens is, because you have so many students with special needs, so your main objective for the lesson would be that you design it in a way that the behavioral issues are not there, and some learning, maybe just one objective is attained, but the class goes on smoothly. So then it's material and resources. What kind of material as resources? What printed material you need, what non-printed material you need. If you need to do presentation, what kind of videos you need to show. Then you have to ensure that you watch those videos. If you're showing any clips, that they are not culturally sensitive, they do not bring about any issue or say something that could be uh, debatable. Then instructional input, so ensuring that the concept the teacher presents or explains, that clarifies everything to the learners. Every new definition, it is explained in simple language so that everybody understands it, and the concepts are introduced in a way, so as per depending upon the ability of your children. So you could have children in your class whose ability is much lower, so maybe your simple verbal instructions are not going to work. So you're going to give them something, or maybe there's a speech issue in the sense, because they've come from, although their learning ability everything is normal, but they've come from a different culture and they have different language, and they're not very good with English, so they have English understanding issues. So obviously that means they will need to learn English as they are part of the group. So ensuring that the instructions either are translated in their language as well on a sheet, or they have a translator in the class when the instructions are given. If you cannot give instructions in their language, if you have that ability and you have that secure language base of that culture, you can also translate your lesson and tell them so that they can grasp that easily. Then the steps in where the teacher and the learner go through the process. So there is guided instructions. Instructions would be, if the teacher, for example, is going to do an activity and she says this is the first step, second step, respectful. As a teacher, you may also ensure that there are some students who may not understand your, say, seven steps of instructions together. Then you have to ensure that if that there are certain students that you give your first 10 instructions you have given, some of the students who know how to follow instructions will carry on, but as a teacher you know there are certain students who will miss out on the point. So you again say, okay, have you repeat, you kind of time yourself, saying every 5 minutes or 10 minutes when that activity is going on, you've given, okay, everybody completed the first instruction, okay, this is the second instruction, I'm hoping you're on this now, have you done this instruction, now you're on the third instruction. So as a teacher you are speaking constantly while they're independently as well doing their work, but you are ensuring that everybody knows what they're doing and everybody is on their work and they are not missing any step while doing any guided work. So this is very important, that when children of different cultures are there, you are ensuring that guided practice is happening. The independent practice. So this is where the learners are to do the task themselves. So to ensure that their creativity and uniqueness is encouraged. Yes, you can give instructions here as well, that now you need to do this now, but without giving any instructional input, in the sense giving them ideas or cues, but going, having an overlook at what they are doing, and then you ensuring that they're doing whatever they're doing, but also ensuring the uniqueness of their culture is also comes out, and you encourage and respect that, so they're able to discuss their culture more. There could be activities for independent practice. For example, you could design activities where they have to discuss something interesting about their culture. They have to make something interesting about their culture so that it becomes acceptable and that creativity also comes out openly. And then, for example, you have suggestions, you will obviously evaluate the work, and this could be peer evaluation as well. So that is also a good way where you share each other's work. So first you can do in the classes, okay, now look at each other's work and say what you found interesting in your pair work. So they will highlight it, or you can say, how would you evaluate it? Then obviously as a teacher, you have a discussion and then you take back for a proper evaluation and then share their work next in the class, so that they know where they are and what they are doing, whether they are doing as per the expectations of the new environment they're in. So, what would be the benefits of such multicultural education? So, multicultural education increases productivity because variety of mental resources are available for completing. So, because, say, for example, the cognitive and moral growth is there among people. Why? Because when you come from different cultures, you are coming with different schemas. You are understanding the same concept in different perspectives. You are understanding different cultures. So, your thinking, your cognitive abilities also grow because the resources provided are much more than one limited resource that you're working on. Then multicultural education also increases creative problem solving skills. So because we are applying different perspectives to create one solution, so we are also enhancing our creative solving issues. Then benefits is that they increase positive relationships. So we understand we become a more congenial atmosphere or an institution. And when they are committed to have equality. So if I'm going to have a multicultural classroom when I'm young, I appreciate that and I will develop such values that whenever I even go on to the normal world, I'm able to accept them and accept that diversity in my environment. Then when we are having multicultural education embedded in our institution, we also decrease the stereotype or prejudice through direct contact and interaction with the diverse because individuals, we understand them, we talk to them, we know they're not bad people. So when they are talking about certain aspects maybe you don't agree with, but you don't have any prejudice against them because you know them so well, and so you take that perspective out in the world as well. So multicultural education then renews vitality of society among the richness of different cultures and borders, and also it makes our world more civic and sophisticated to live in. So every child statement, this is seen everywhere in the education system. So what we mean by that is we emphasize that every child should be included. So what is that? That learner of the English, so to sum all this up, in the school, learners of English as a second language and speakers of English as first language should merge together. They should have more interactions, so they learn the language. Members of underrepresented ethnic groups and members of well represented groups should merge together, so they should be included. Students who are physically challenged should be mixed with the ones who are not. So the school providing for the right equipment, the environment, ensuring there are um, all, say for example, lifts are there, and there are certain ramps made for children who cannot climb steps, come down the steps, or go up the steps. Inclusion of male, females, all different genders are respected. Then the children who live in different economical backgrounds, so who have lived in poverty and who have not, how the school will maintain a more congenial atmosphere to ensure those differences in the school at least are minimized. So there could be that the stationery, for example, the students are not allowed to bring any stationery from home. All the stationery is provided by the school, so that there is no showing off of better pencil or better sharpeners or better pencil box, so that there is a consistency and the children don't feel uh, low or bad about their family situation. Students who have or have not been successful in school, doesn't matter. A culture should be there where it is accepted that okay, some will do well, some may not do well, but that does not mean that they don't have learning. They are not learning, they are learning as the environment, but at the same time they may not score in certain subjects, so highlighting that, but they are very good in sports, or they're very good in painting or music or singing, so that they are able to focus on something that they are very good at and enhance that, then if they cannot do very well in academics. So how would you do that? So curriculum of the mainstream should include the multicultural curriculum, their heroes, their holidays, ensuring that every culture's heroes' holidays are included in the educational aspect. If in case it's not in the curriculum, it's not in the books, you create extra sheets, extra activities. It could be in essay writing, or it could be reading time, it could be role plays. So integrating everything that way. Then the structural reform of the school should be made properly, and then the social action awareness should be in. As a school, you should ensure every culture's awareness is there, and the multicultural environment or curriculum is well embedded. So, just the key to remember for the lesson is that a key is that education is to change schools so that all the students will have equal opportunities to learn. So, ensuring that you have that implemented in your school community, so that every child has that equal opportunity to develop and grow as an individual. So that's it. These units were very small. So if they have any questions, I tried to extend it as much as possible. But if you have any questions, you can ask me. Won't be that. Any questions?
No question, ma.
Okay, then I think then that's it. Today's session is small because these units were very small. So I think we will leave here then. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, ma.
Okay, thank you, all of you.
Okay, thank you.